All right, folks, welcome to GAIN, the Generative AI News Rundown. It is April 13th, and we have, once again, a lot of news today. I thought this might actually be a slow week in generative AI news, and in some ways it maybe is, but no, actually it's not. We have breaking news this morning that we're going to lead off with about Amazon jumping into the generative AI race with some things beyond what you might expect. We're also going to talk about everything from Charles Barkley and Elon Musk to HuggingGPT, which everyone should get excited about. MailChimp, Expedia. Expedia, it's kind of a fail in this space from my perspective, but we've got a lot more. Alibaba, a few other things might show up. But today, we're talking about generative AI news, and each week joining me, my colleague, Eric Schwartz. Eric, welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no such thing as a slow week in this area.
No, we thought there might be a slow week at some point, but hey, I don't know. Welcome also to some of our live guests, Mikhail Stanislawic, Ellen Furstenberg, both over in LinkedIn. There's some folks in YouTube as well. Thanks for joining us today. If you are out there, just drop a little note so we know you're there. Also, feel free to comment. We'll work it into the conversation. Mikhail and Ellen know all about that. And we're going to get right into it. So what do we do here on the Generative AI News Rundown? We talk about the news of the week, top stories, give a little context here. And there's news this morning from our friends at Amazon. So they have a new cloud service around large language models, not just their own, but others as well. Eric, give us the rundown.
Yeah, it's people have been wondering for a while when or how Amazon would get into this space, as Microsoft and Google have been pushing ahead with their own models, and now Amazon Web Services has announced a new tool or platform called a Bedrock, which essentially acts as a sort of facilitator for not only Amazon's own new large language models, but also for those built by AI21, built by Stability AI, and Anthropic. And the idea is that you can build website services and apps and provide all kinds of generative AI tools for text and images and so on, with powered by AWS and its existing set of features, which have been obviously very popular and in wide use. So it definitely clears a path for a lot of companies and people who are interested in using generative AI who maybe have hesitated to maybe switch from AWS or to get too involved in one that doesn't have all the background and supporting elements that AWS offers.
Yeah. Okay. So, Amazon may be a little late to this race, but not too bad. We're still very early in the development here. And a couple of things I think are really interesting here. So first of all, Titan, their own solution, is available as part of this project. And Amazon, a lot of people don't know this. They've had a generative AI large language model for a long time. In fact, there are a couple of Alexa projects that they used it in. They just didn't tell people about it, and it wasn't made generally available. So in this case, they're going to be able to showcase their own, but I think it's really smart of them to showcase some of these others as well. Just keep people using AWS. And it looks like kind of a alternative to Azure OpenAI services.
Yeah.
Right. So Azure is really focused on pushing its OpenAI solution. AWS is coming in and saying, hey, we're going to have everything else.
Yeah. And I think sometimes names don't really mean much, but I think it's telling that they're calling it Bedrock. They're very much trying to say this is the foundation for any generative AI. And the difference, of course, from Microsoft is that obviously for a lot of reasons, Microsoft's very all in on OpenAI, on their GPT-4 and ChatGPT and so on, all those models. Whereas Amazon is saying, hey, we have our models, which are useful for some things, but if you like Anthropic, if you like Stability, if you like AI21, they're available too. You can employ them through us and get all the things that you like about them with all the things that you like about using AWS.
Yeah. So very early on in the process here, they just announced it, but a lot of people like to use AWS. It's just going to be easy for them to access some of these models. I think they've got a long way to go to catch up to some of the other players in the space. But I think the biggest problem that comes out of this is actually for Google, because they have their own solution that they announced a few weeks ago, but nobody can really use it yet. So it's not general availability, it's really restricted, and they really want to push their own models more than third-party models. So, to me, it looks like, okay, so you've got Azure pushing OpenAI. Of course, you'll be able to use other models on there as well, but they're pushing OpenAI. You've got NVIDIA with a new solution for multi-models, but they're really pushing, Picasso and Nemo, their large language model, a couple others in there. So more their stuff, but you could use other people's models on there as well. So they definitely have a service around that. You've got Google, which wants to push their own model through their cloud services. And then you've got Amazon, which is just going to be the marketplace. And to me, that seems like a good place to be right now.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, if there's one lesson that AWS has learned over many years, is that having your own products is definitely a lucrative space, but hosting the products of others that people really want is definitely a pathway toward a profit that in some ways involves less effort on their part.
Yeah, and Alan makes a good point. He says that the AWS models aren't general availability either, because there is some restrictions. So that's a good point of clarification. But I do think this idea, and I think a lot of people will see this, it's like one place to go to get a lot of models. I mean, that's something that we've seen. Well, look, we talk about like Hugging Face and things like that. But the idea here, and there's plenty of others, like Lightning AI, has a bunch of models. There's a few others that provide access to this, but AWS, I think it's a good strategy. So right now, I would say Azure, because OpenAI is really the center of all of the activity, the gravity of what's going on in the space. And then like everything else for AWS, I think that looks pretty attractive.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to our next story. Oh, and this is one you wrote about, Eric. Tell us what's going on with Elon Musk. He's in the news again.
Yes, this is more of a substantiated rumor space. It's not an official announcement or anything, but sorry about that. There's a lot of evidence right now that Elon Musk is very interested in creating generative AI projects for Twitter. And there's been reporting on how, even though Twitter has slashed a lot of its staff and cut down on its costs a lot, he's hired some of the Google Deep Brain AI researchers. He's purchased a lot of the hardware necessary for creating and training large language models. And there's reasons to think that there's value in it in terms of applying generative AI to Twitter for advertising, for content generation. They have a lot of data, a lot of words. OpenAI used to use them until Musk blocked them in December. But it's a very, especially for Musk, it's a surprisingly under the radar project, at least for now.
Well, one of the things that he's talked about from a Twitter standpoint is it wants to be the everything app. Could it be like the WeChat for the Western world? I think that remains to be seen, and there's a long way to go there, whether that could actually happen. It's hard to imagine a scenario where LLM wouldn't be part of it. The other thing is too, they have the new, I can't remember what it's called. Is it called Notes now? The long form. They're trying to get people into long form writing on Twitter. So it's like the medium killer, right?
I think more of a
Interestingly enough, yeah, they shut down Review, which was their email newsletter, which is like, why? I mean, like, okay, fine. So, but now they want people just to come to their site, to read long form as well as short form. And if you're going to do that, heck, you're going to need generative AI tools, because every other authoring tool is starting to integrate these types of things. So that makes total sense to me. And also they have they have an ad platform. And so if they integrate into that, tell people create images, write copy, whatever, seems like kind of a layup. They should be doing this, whether or not they are going to be competing directly against OpenAI, I think is is not relevant. I think they're not going to be. It's just it's an application, and they need LLMs, and they'll probably have some proprietary models.
Yeah, and he's staked a very public position against OpenAI, despite having been one of the original founders and advisors, and giving a lot of money to OpenAI when it was a nonprofit, and since then repeatedly criticized it and its products. So he's not really in a position where he can simply open up and then, as I said, cutting off access to Twitter's data in December. There's no way for him to very easily just bring on board a third party generative AI solution. So he's going to go as the building it for Twitter from the ground up. But I think it's questionable how quickly that's going to happen if he's really starting from scratch compared to Amazon, who was well ahead on this stuff and still took a while to get to the public space.
Yeah, my expectation is he's going to do, or Twitter is going to do, is like a two-pronged attack. They're going to build some of their own internal models, but they're going to use external models. They have to. It just makes sense. So we'll see. Now, I mean, we could say like he signed the letter, or he got the foundation that he primarily funds to issue the letter.
Yep.
Maybe it's a chance to catch up. But yeah, we already knew that he was thinking about doing something in the space. And so now we just have like another data point, and a data point that's pretty important because he's buying enough processing power to build an internal model.
Yeah. And it does make me wonder also, because there was a while back where he started claiming that there was going to be humanoid robots built by Tesla that would be able to obey commands and everything. And it feels oddly like he's building the body at Tesla and the brain at Twitter, because obviously there's a lot of potential for robots with generative AI software to understand humans. So it suggests maybe that project at Tesla is not going to have a generative AI element, which will be surprising if they really want to build robots that understand what people are telling them.
Okay, perfect. Let's leave it there. Let's move on to the next story. And sorry, everybody, if it seems like there's a little lag today. I don't know. That's probably something going on with me, but hopefully you'll overcome that. HuggingGPT, one of the coolest announcements over the last week, and frankly, over the last 2 months, I think. Eric, you wrote about this. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, HuggingGPT, despite the name, it's actually a Microsoft project. Researchers at Microsoft took what they've been doing at OpenAI in terms of developing generative AI conversation with ChatGPT, and combined it with what Hugging Face has been offering, which is a sort of library of different LLMs, different models to use for generative AI, and said, what if one could contribute to the other? And that's Hugging GPT, where you ask a conversational AI, a chatbot, to do something, and instead of just performing the task from a single model that it's connected to, it actually sorts through different LLMs to figure out which one would be best to use, and then engages with that, completes whatever task you ask, and then comes back and explains what it did. It's it's sort of a meta generative AI chatbot in that sense. It's a very clever idea, and suggests that there's going to be a lot of potential for both generalizing and specializing within this technology in a way that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, I like this. I'm glad to see more people are talking about this. Here's the research paper that this comes from. And let's see if we can go down. Oh, I just wanted to talk just a little bit about what I like about this, and this idea of the multimodel approach. So this idea of the LLM as a controller, orchestrator, whether that needs to be the controller, this is one of the things that I think is really interesting, because a lot of the people that we've worked with over the years have focused on NLUs, natural language understanding units. That also could be an orchestrator. You could run them in parallel. Models behind whatever your controller is, what they call the LLM controller, could also include NLU-based systems as well as generative systems. But we started talking about this idea of hybrid models really early on. People were all excited about ChatGPT and sort of these these single path solutions that go to one model. But as soon as we got into search, we were talking about multiple models. So like a LLM plus a retrieval model. The LLM's using some interpretation. It's doing the generation on the back end, but the retrieval model is ensuring that it's actually relevant and true data. And so I just expect that this is going to be the way it's going to be working. And we've already seen this already. We have the idea of multimodal models. And GPT-4 is really sort of pushing that, where we're going to have images and video alongside text. So text in and lots of different types of things coming back, or speech in, lots of different things coming back. But this is where we're going to get these everything type of solutions. As amazing as ChatGPT or Bing or Bard or any of these other things are, it's going to be harnessing all of these solutions together, which I think is going to be much more interesting.
Yeah, the multimodal, multi-model combination. As you mentioned, it's not the concept isn't brand new. It's similar to what, for instance, sometimes car voice assistants will answer questions about the car using their own database, but switch to an inbuilt Alexa or Google Assistant or whatever to answer other questions, and without the user necessarily knowing where the information is coming from. And I think in this case, it actually tells you where all the information is coming from. But it makes sense. It is a database of databases that you can interact with through natural language is appealing, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's a good way to describe it. I mean, a database of database, but it's like models being the option here, right? But also databases on the back end. And Mikkel has this interesting point. The more work we do, the more it turns out that NLU is not the best approach for a controller, even though we thought so initially. And I think that's really interesting. I have a slightly different opinion on this. One of the things I have been really interested in, like if people have been listening to my podcast over the last 5 or 6 months, I've asked a lot of people who come from the NLU world and say, like, why is an LLM so much better than your NLU? And a lot of people don't know, but they just say it's a lot more data and things like that. But my perspective is that NLUs are actually very useful. And I suspect the best solution is going to be the NLU plus the LLM at the controller phase, and then some sort of orchestration between the two where you do some prediction about which one's going to control. Because for certain types of things, it just makes sense that an NLU might work well. You're going to have to use some sort of validation step anyway. You might be able to cut that off early and actually have faster performance, for example. Because if you can detect right away with really high confidence that the NLU already has a pre-canned answer to come back, that's going to be a much faster response point. We're not going to have to deal with the latency of the generative side. But I understand this, and I think that there's a lot of things that we've been looking at right now in the contact center where they're trying to hold on to the NLU and just like the NLU, and then maybe it sends to generative or those types of things. And that looks like it's not going to succeed. I think you're going to have to run them in parallel in order to really get the value of the NLU, because and maybe other people like who are watching right now will have a different perspective on this, because a lot of people have done this for many years, is that we've seen amazing improvements in NLU over the last decade, particularly over the last 5 years, but we've hit a wall, or we've hit sort of declining marginal returns, and we're not seeing those step changes anymore. LLMs looks like that step change. And there's a lot of people who just think it's going to replace it entirely. I don't think it will. I think we're going to want some sort of intelligence. The other thing about that, like a lot of people don't think about, is the LLM, even though it could potentially solve the problem, it doesn't actually maintain sort of understanding of this. So we're going to have to use an NLU or an NLU type analysis tool afterwards to basically store some of this intelligence that's going on in these conversations.
Yeah, and again, going back to some of the strategies being used when it's purely just for different voice assistants, where we've seen now where the voice assistant will attempt to answer a question while simultaneously sending the question off to other databases and other AIs for answers in order to be able to have all of those options available and provide the answer in a timely fashion. I think that's also going to become an issue of the latency of these responses as the potential sources of information grow larger and larger.
Yeah, and Brian Ryder has done a lot of this in this space. He was just making some comments about this idea. It depends on whether you like accuracy or not, and because the NLUs are like generally more accurate right now because they're tried and tested. They're more. Are they more accurate? They're less likely to give you a problematic or completely
Yeah,
off base solution.
they might
Not
say
that
they
they
don't know.
don't sometimes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But the LLMs will get better over time, and and Mikhail's talking about this LLM plus LLM at the controller layer, but we'll see. I think there's going to be some human created intelligence, like an NLU plus the LLM, both at the intent identification and orchestration, the controller layer, I guess what Hugging GPT calls it, and then also in the back end. So, all right, I think it's enough on that topic. I want to move to applications. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things that are going on. We've talked about, boy, that's a lag. Sorry about that. We've talked about on the show a lot how generative AI is like sort of the feature bonanza for all these existing enterprise applications. And we have a couple of examples I want to talk about this week. So the first one is MailChimp. So MailChimp, my understanding is like this has actually been in the works for a long time. And MailChimp, or Intuit, which owns MailChimp, finally realized like, oh, yeah, we should probably just put this out there, like refine it and get it out there in the product because, okay, like a lot of other people are doing it. And by the way, does it really make sense to use a tool like Jasper or Copy AI just to like, if I'm in MailChimp and I'm creating my email template, should I go to one of these third-party things? Go over there, create it, copy, paste. What if I want to change it? Then I have to go to another application or something like that. And I think that there will be these specialty solutions that are really good at writing a particular type of thing. That makes total sense. But also, like MailChimp should be better at creating emails that convert than anybody else with a fine-tuned model of GPT or with some other large language model.
yeah, I think yeah, you make exactly. It's also a question when you say MailChimp has been working on it for a while. It's such a it feels like such an obvious application for generative AI that it's certainly something we've seen in from other providers who, among a list of other things, they say, oh, we can help you write your marketing emails and so on. So MailChimp wanting to bring it in house makes a lot of sense, especially since it seems like they've been developing these kinds of things from within for a while and are using this as a way to augment their AI plans rather than as the initial beginning of their interest in the space. And I think it's going to be an essential feature for any sort of distribution system like MailChimp. The question is, will MailChimp be ahead of the game because of its previous work in this area? And as you mentioned, the question of who's going to pay for it is the other unanswered question.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was sort of my key takeaway from this. We can break that open, but just in terms of MailChimp, they did say that they've got 20 plus tools that use data science or generative AI. Okay, or AI more generally. Okay, fine. Like, the marketing team's on overdrive. We're important. We're relevant. Those types of things, which is fine. But what do the users care about? What the users care about ultimately is I'm in this tool. Are there features there that help me make this better? So like we think about template builders, if you're creating an email, so you can put your text here, you can put your images here, layout. That's like really useful. If I'm staring at the blank page, I'm coming in with an email, I can come in and say, oh, just, type in, here's what I want, that type of thing. And then you just drag and drop. And so this makes sense. Now the question is, like, there was one other thing I mentioned in this, and other than pricing, and this was, they talk about tone of voice and this is like going to be customized to your brand. No, it's not. I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding something, unless I like really just guessing wrong here, that it's not going to be your tone of voice based on your brand. It'll be like different tones of voice. Again, like we got marketing departments over their skis a little bit. So, professional, sassy, whatever, whatever it might be, erudite, that's what I want the language to be like. This will be much better. MailChimp will have much more stickiness if they create a way for people to do some customization around the model, which actually does, add some prompt priming in. That might be all you need to do, that says, hey, this is us, this is our background spec, that every time they put in a request for a new email, it takes that into account. That's really what needs to happen.
Yeah, and some of their examples of how it might be used, in talking about like sending out creating an email based on just saying that that your company has a sale on a particular product, and here's the details of how much and when, and then having an entire email come out of that. And not only that, but having options, and obviously MailChimp learning from what you choose and what you end up putting in your email to evolve over time. I think that there's real value there, and especially because MailChimp has so much industry specific data from its customers. As Brian Ryder mentioned, they have 800,000 paying customers. That's a lot of data, a lot of emails,
and 20 million users, and billions and billions of emails sent. They also have some other tools that they built in, like time of day, but this idea of just like what converts better, what's a better subject line, those types of things. Like it just makes sense. Yes, you could go to a third-party tool like Jasper, but it just makes sense to have it. This is why we talked about Canva last week. It's just like have the tools where you're actually doing the work. And then maybe you have some overarching solution. This is where Copilot comes in. Say, oh, we know all these things about you. And then we can create consistency across applications. That'll be helpful. But I think most of these things are just going to be, I use a tool today. Does it help me get my job done better? Now, we did mention this idea of who's going to pay for all this. Inference costs are a thing. They're not free. Most of these companies are rolling these out and saying, hey, just like it's part of the service now. But it's part of the service, and they have increased costs, so something they didn't have in the past. So my expectation is eventually this is going to be paid for. Right now, it's just competitive parity, getting the press release. 2 quarters from now, when the bill comes due that you're paying OpenAI or somebody, and that hurts the margins of your division for that product, those executives are going to really be keen on trying to figure out how they can extract more money, or at least limit the potential cost impact.
Yeah, and especially when it's a tool like MailChimp that is very embedded in marketing of many, many companies. They're not going to necessarily immediately leave MailChimp, but there's going to be a lot of complaints if all of a sudden they're the ones who have to pay for the inference costs that MailChimp had been handling up till now. So I don't know if there's a compromise there, but it's going to be a active debate, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, now we're going to go to another story, which isn't quite. I have something maybe less positive to say about it, but I'll just I know a bunch of people just joined recently. This is Generative AI News Rundown. We do this every week at Thursday at 12 noon, except for we're not going to do it next week, Thursday, 12 noon, just so you know. It's either another day or we're just going to skip a week because we have Model Mania next week, which we're really talking about enterprise conversational AI solutions. So if people are interested in that, we've got actually 5 companies who are going to be on stage. Might be 6, actually. I have to check. But we have a bunch of companies who are in the enterprise space who are going to show you how they're adding solutions or generative AI solutions to help in the contact center, to help marketing departments, a bunch of different things. It's going to be really fun. If you guys want to come to that, it's free. bit.ly/model-mania. It's like the simplest way to do it. So it's like a Zoom event, a bunch of people on stage. We're going to show a bunch of demos. You'll see a lot of things in one place really quickly. And I think it's going to be it's really going to be fun. I've seen some of the demos that are going to be shown next week. It's going to be great. So definitely everybody come and show up. We'll put a link in the chat here as well in just a moment. Okay. So MailChimp, what's their core business? Sending emails. So the feature that they're going to implement with generative AI is something that helps you construct the email more efficiently, more effectively. Then we have Expedia. What is Expedia's core business to you, Eric?
To me, I'd say it's how I would look for cheap or easy travel plans like flights and so on.
Yeah. And one of the things that drives me nuts about Expedia, by the way, is they default to hotels. Why do they default to hotels? Do most people go to Expedia to book hotels? No, they go to book flights or to search for flights. But what happens is you type in this information in the form because you just assume it's flights. And then all of a sudden they show you hotels. You're like, oh, it's like they're tricking us, right? And then they know what it's about and all these other types of things. Okay, great. This is the type of company we're dealing with, that they don't know what their core business is, but okay, I'm sure they book a lot of hotels. So, and maybe this helps them book more hotels, and they're very clever. All right. Why is Expedia disappointing? Well, it's because you can't search for flights. You can't even search for hotels, really. You can get reviews on hotels. You can't book anything. Okay. What they want to do is apparently they want to be TripAdvisor. They want you to think they're TripAdvisor, or they're worried that TripAdvisor. So all you can really do is do travel planning, and it can give you like suggestions on things to do. And it says you can actually save it to your profile, and that will make it easier to book. But actually, that functionality, I couldn't get it to work in the mobile app. I tried that. Okay, so I'm just going to say one more thing about this. Bing Chat does it all. In case you haven't tried this, I was like, I wonder if Bing can do this, because like the search engine can do it. Can Bing Chat do this? Yes, I had a conversation with Bing Chat. It gave me all of the lists. I could actually tap on it in the Bing mobile app. But everyone should check out the Bing mobile app. It's like great because it's got GPT-4 in there. I could tap on it just to go to that, and I could book it there, or I could just have a conversation. It said, okay, which one do you want? I said the 9:54 flight. Great. Would you like to book this? Yes. Okay. Give me your name, credit card number. Like, it could take the full transaction. So the last time I checked, Bing's core business is search. Now they have this functionality on the website that you can book flights and things like that. But they also have book flights in the new Bing. Expedia doesn't allow you to do their core business. What is going on?
I mean, I do wonder how much. Yeah, it feels like maybe they didn't trust the technology, or they wanted to announce it before it was ready. Maybe it's not a good look for them. I mean, it goes back to that whole thing about when people try to use generative AI tools. When the average person tries to use a generative AI tool, if they're either going to be impressed or they're not going to be impressed, and if they're they find that using it with Expedia is not helpful, they'll either find some other website that does have a better version of it, or they might just give up on using that kind of technology at all and just go straight to the website and go through the menus and everything. I think it's going to be, this may end up being like a cautionary tale for future companies that want to embed generative AI within their services.
All right, we don't have to belabor it too long, and I don't spend a lot of time talking about negative stories. We actually come across a lot of negative stories. But when I find an abject example like this, I just have to point it out that the marketing team, or the executives driving the marketing team, or the PR team, or somebody, they wanted to be in the game. Now, here's a way. I'm going to give everybody free advice here. Here's a way to do this and not piss people off. One thing is to say, hey, we have this stuff coming. You will be able to do everything soon. Right now, you can do these travel planning. We can give you reviews. And so then people have proper expectations when they go there, that your little tool can do something that maybe they find valuable, but you're setting up the expectation. You're giving them some confidence that their core business will support you with this new technology going forward. So that's what I should tell the marketing people. Like, to me, this was marketing malpractice, but you know what? They probably all got kudos. Maybe they'll get bonuses because they got a lot of headlines out of it, because they said Expedia is doing generative AI. And when they announced it, you couldn't actually use it for like a day or two. So, and a lot of the journalists just write off the headlines anyway. They don't actually test the things out like we do. So, so they got a lot of headlines. So maybe there was a success for them. It's just like, I have a feeling that a lot of people are just like, oh, this is a bunch of garbage. You guys don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. Michael Stanislaw mentioned Google style, maybe, which is when you announce but don't allow people to use, which is true, except, Google has demonstrated some really impressive stuff that no one can use. And of course, very famously, when they wanted to reveal Google Bard and did a live demonstration of it, immediately had a factual error in their answers. So it's sometimes speed is important, but sometimes it's not worth being fast if you're going to encounter these kinds of mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. I guess OpenAI style, just throw it out there. But at least OpenAI style, they throw something out there and it's actually useful. All right, so let's go on. I think we've done enough assailing of Expedia at this point. Just a couple more stories today. We'll do really quick hitters on those because we're coming up on our time. Alibaba, they're going to have a ChatGPT rival. One of the things that I think is particularly interesting about this is they're putting it in everything. So they're saying, oh, it'll transcribe meeting notes. Oh, it's going to be part of Tmall Genie. Tmall Genie is their version of Alexa. So, why Alexa doesn't have this yet, using Titan in the back end, I don't know. That should come soon. But they're going to have it for writing assistant, right? So it's like the everything solution. I'm not sure if this is a good strategy for them. Oh, it's like an e-commerce assistant for shopping. I'm not sure this is a great strategy for anybody to implement, and who knows, like announcing it versus being able to use it. Oh, by the way, there is going to be an English language version. So if you don't speak Mandarin, then you'll still be able to try it out. But I don't know. I kind of prefer this idea that you rolled out for one thing. Like Bing said, hey, we'll do search better, conversational search. And, now they're booking Airplane. But like saying everything and I'm not sure this is a great strategy, but like this is the way companies like this do it.
Yeah, it's because it's worth remembering that as much as Google or Microsoft might want to be perceived as like an everything service, Alibaba really is an everything service. In terms of, the examples of how they're integrating it, everything from their Slack type service that will use it for summarizing conversations, using it for even handwritten stuff. They're putting it, as you said, in the Tmall Genie to improve retail. I guess it's a question of what would the order have been of rolling it out. And I think if I had to guess, all the vice presidents of various divisions all wanted it. So the answer was to just do it all at once. And we'll see if that's helpful or not. And not even, especially because it's not even just for them. They're also putting it out as a customizable service for third parties. So it's like, it's really, theoretically, should it work the way they want it to work, Alibaba would have just immediately, if not win the race for generative AI in China, then certainly be well ahead of some of its rivals like Baidu, because they'll be able to successfully say, yes, we have it, and yes, it's in that, and yes, it's in that, and all done. And oh, we don't have that service, but you can use our AI for that service. Like, done.
Yeah. And McCall had his question: what happened to Ernie from Baidu? They just actually had an announcement. They did a rollout of it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, they're being a little more cautious, and there's also related questions of Baidu, at least for now, seems a little more concerned about not stepping on any regulatory toes as China continues to put out new rules and regulations about generative AI, especially deepfakes, but generative AI in general. So it may be that Alibaba has either more of a heads up or is less worried about causing problems, but Baidu has been extra cautious in that regard.
Okay. We also have news from OpenAI. Mikhail Stanislawic has like this little tracker, how many days since an announcement by OpenAI, which is always kind of funny. And a lot of times it's like 0 days. It's like they have the bug bounty program. What happened here?
Yes. Well, it's funny because it's true. They're very quick on, they're often coming out with new stuff, but this is one of the rare cases where it feels genuinely reactive rather than proactive, because what happened was OpenAI had to take down ChatGPT for a little bit because of a security flaw that was discovered by a cybersecurity expert who has his own company that was allowing some people to see at least the titles of conversations that ChatGPT was having with other people. And as he had pointed out at that time, there was no bug bounty program. There's no incentive for people to, for white hat hackers essentially, to find and report problems with ChatGPT. And so possibly in reaction to that issue, there is now a bug bounty program where if you discover those kind of security flaws, you can tell OpenAI through a platform that does work with a lot of companies at running bug bounty programs, and they will pay you up to $20,000. Although I think some of the bigger cash prizes would have to be for genuinely destabilizing level flaws or issues with the software.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, so it's interesting. They've been proactive, but their last two posts have been reactive. One was, yes, we really do care about privacy and safety and security, and here are all the things that we do. It's Italian privacy authority. Please read this, and everybody else. Which was like something that they haven't typically done in the past, but I think it was a smart move. Just like put something down, like show people that like actually we don't just throw things out there. But one of the things we talked about, and the guy who discovered this, I think he's Nagli, Nagli on Twitter. And it might be Nagli or something like that. But
yeah, I think that's his handle. It's Nagli.
Yeah. So, he was really pushing them to do this. And I think this is also in reaction to what's going on in Italy and Canada. Yeah, we're being serious about this. And one of the things, the blind spot for them was they were aware of what they need to do from a security standpoint for a backend API, but they weren't for a consumer app, or they weren't well enough schooled in what the problems that can happen. And so, they blamed it on like an upgrade to one of the open source software pieces, but it was actually the way they implemented it, when they implemented it, that turned out to be the bigger problem. It wasn't like everyone else had this security vulnerability who used that open source component. So it was something that they just weren't aware of. So I think this is good. I like to see that they're doing this and taking it seriously. It's and they act really quickly. I mean, this just happened a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so let's do our last story of the week, or maybe you'll have one more, but I'll just do this because we need to wrap this up. Fanduel deepfakes young Charles Barkley in its new spot. I think people like Charles Barkley, if you're not familiar with him, is kind of a famous guy, NBA player. But I think it's just like this example of deepfake synthetic media just showing up in mainstream. We saw America's Got Talent with Metaphysic last year. We saw the young Luke Skywalker de-aging. We've seen this in film a lot. We're just going to see so much more of this in commercial media.
Yeah, and it's not as though CGI technology or animation of various sorts hasn't been used in ads before, but the quality of voice and visuals, and just the ability of the real present version of Charles Barkley to interact with his past self. I mean, it is at a level that feels like it's crossed the uncanny valley and into just now seeming like he's actually talking to his younger self in a way that would have not worked well until pretty recently. And
let's be clear, though. I mean, like, this isn't like a CGI, right?
No,
this is a human actor sitting on a couch next to Charles Barkley that's got sort of the stature of a young Charles Barkley, and then they're basically doing some deepfakes face swap type of technology.
Yes, exactly. But it doesn't. It lacks or doesn't have the problems of even a few years ago, where it would have been either very obviously fake or had some other issues. It just feels like I agree,
and I know that you're aware of that, but I just want to be
of course,
like there's different technologies here. The other thing too is he does move his head side to side a little bit. That's another thing to look with deepfakes are really very good head on, but so they must have done a lot of modeling side of his head as well to make that work. So this has been fun. Anything we missed that you want to hit on really quickly, Eric?
Only just to say that you mentioned the ban of ChatGPT in Italy, and the regulatory agency there has set a deadline of April 30th for ChatGPT to implement several things, which is very unlikely, involving opt out and technology that can tell people when their data has been used for training. Things that are not going to happen, at least certainly in the next couple of weeks. So this may be an issue, and as you mentioned, it's expanding from there. And the European Data Protection Board has started its own task force. So what the final version of any regulations will be is hard to say, but the movement has begun to at least set some up in Europe.
Okay, so actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So let's just talk about a couple scenarios that can happen here. So first of all, ChatGPT is available basically worldwide, right? Let's talk about those other solutions like Bing Chat, for example. Is that available worldwide? Is Bard available worldwide? Like these other tools are not available worldwide. So ChatGPT is the real solution. Now, what's happening? So you can circumvent the ban by using a VPN, it's acting like you're from the US or somewhere. Not the perfect solution, but an okay solution for a lot of folks. If in fact the requests are impractical and OpenAI says, okay, we'll just keep it off. We're going to have to. I mean, might just say like, they could say like, it's really not possible what you're asking for. So it's just like, we'll just keep it off. Or they'll say it's not practical now. So we'll keep it off until we get to this. And at some point, maybe we'll get to this. So this allows an opportunity for new people to come in and to fill that void or something, but they haven't yet. The other thing that could happen is if they just say, okay, we're going to keep it off. If the other European nations start saying, we demand the same thing, are they just going to shut it off for the whole continent? And if everyone just circumvents it to do VPN, is that really the outcome that the European Union wants?
Yeah. And it raises the point. Alan Furstenberg mentioned it, about why it's not possible, and it's the technology doesn't work without having ongoing and access to tons of data, and it's the idea of being able to pick out individual contributors from that data is not feasible. Certainly not in the short term, and I think. I don't know if there's going to be I don't know if there can be a compromise like GDPR for other kinds of technology in terms of privacy, but I know that Europe takes these kinds of things very seriously. This isn't a short-term political grandstanding move. This is the actual regulatory agency pushing for coming up with a solution, and to be fair to them, investigating it first before announcing what they're going to, the blanket ban across Europe. So. I don't know. I don't think it'll be a blanket ban, but I don't know what possible way they could compromise on this because it involves.
So first of all, Alan had some good points. Like, why would it not be possible? So possible, impractical. There are some things you could ask for which are possible or impractical, but this goes back to the pretext for the investigation, which was about the exposure of private data through a security vulnerability that could have happened. It could have been available. We don't know that anybody got hacked or there was any like exfiltration of data. But they sort of admitted that this was a problem. It was an error on their part. It was basically a human error in terms of the implementation. And so that was what actually kicked off this thing. But what happens with the regular? Well, we're going to start looking at a lot of things. We're also concerned about this idea of if you used people's personal data for training. Well, personal data, what does that mean? Is it stuff that's already on the internet that just got scraped and trained the model? And if you're asking for to know what information from any individual was used in the training data set, that's not going to happen. Maybe at some point there will be tools that allow you to do that, but it doesn't actually retain that data. If you're asking about, are they using their personal data in retraining the model based on their interactions with ChatGPT? Okay, so maybe they can do that. Is it something they want to do? Is it impractical? They already have this sort of automatic opt-out right now for using that. So I think that those are really important things to think about. And I actually don't think they had any intention of doing this. Like, I don't think they were like that cavalier. I think they just didn't know because they haven't rolled out consumer products in the past, or the people that have rolled out consumer products weren't in the room to like sort of raise these issues. No one sort of brought it up. But remember what happened in Australia with like Google and Facebook. And like, if you bring down something too draconian and they just shut off the service, is that really good for the populace, or is a like negotiated settlement a better outcome?
Yeah, and the other element that the Italian authorities brought up is the data coming from possibly those who are under 18, which is it's a whole other issue of is their data being used? Are the people under 18 using the service, and does it have guardrails to protect to stop ChatGPT from telling sharing things or showing things that you're not supposed to show to children, or that is illegal to show to children. It's a very tangled situation, and the sort of the ways that generative AI functions both for visuals and text means that it's the kind of granular data of who's giving information, what information they're giving, and how it's being processed. The technical problems seem overwhelming to me.
Well, the key point here to me is like they definitely made an error. Why they made the error, how they made the error, like doesn't matter. They made an error, which gave everybody the idea, or gave everyone the pretext to actually look, or the rationale to look. But then a lot of the issues that are coming up right now are things that people have been talking about for months, but they didn't really, on their own, they probably didn't have enough impetus, motivation, reasoning to like take an action. But once they had this one that clearly was something they could take action on, then there's like, oh, let's look at this. Let's look at that. Let's look at this. Let's look at that. And, it just sort of is what it is. OpenAI, I think, is going to want to, and particularly Microsoft, is going to want to like accommodate as best they can. I think they'll try to figure something out. But I do think it's really interesting to see what will happen is if they just like keep it off, and then what the implications are. Okay, so Eric, we had finished at 44 minutes, and then you threw this other thing on the table. Now we're over 50 minutes. So we are done for the week. This has been really fun. We covered a lot of ground today. Thanks so much for people in the chat, adding comments, asking questions, that type of thing. Always a little bit better. We're here every week except for next week at 12 noon Eastern time on LinkedIn, on YouTube. So definitely come back. Next week, join us for Model Mania at 12 o'clock noon Eastern. It's free. bit.ly/model-mania is the way to go there. We're going to see a half dozen different companies show enterprise LLM features inside of basically conversational AI and a few other enterprise use cases. I think you're really going to like that. Plus, we've got some other information we'll be sharing for the first time there. So hope you guys can join us. That's bit.ly/model-mania. So that's going to be super fun. And we'll be back with a game very soon because the news doesn't stop. All right. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.